And we're live. We're live.
Awesome.
Welcome, everybody. This is Odell Bazell, and I'm here with the great Kent Julian. And Kent did good. Kent didn't tell me his whole government name because y'all know I'll come up here and make up some stuff. But I'm excited to have Kent here. If you don't know who Kent Julian is, then this is going to be an introduction to him. But just from a personal standpoint, Kent, I consider him a coach. I consider him a mentor. I've known of Kent for years. He doesn't know that I cyber stalked him for years, just following the great work that he does as a professional speaker. Last year, I joined his coaching program, and it's been everything and more that I asked for. And so I'm just blessed and fortunate to have him as a coach and to have him as a friend. Kent, how you doing? How you living?
I'm doing great, and thanks for that great introduction.
For sure. And make sure you go to paidtospeakpodcast.com. Kent has an incredible podcast. Kent, tell the people what it's about and who exactly it's for.
Yeah, so what I do is what Odell was saying. I'm primarily a paid speaker. That's what I do. That's what I do for a living. But on the side, I've been asked over the years so much about, how do you do it? How do you get into it? Especially because of my background and how I got into it, because I really didn't have any kind of business background. So over the years, it started off doing some one-on-one coaching with people who were just friends that wanted to become speakers. And then it turned into, I host a conference once a year for people who are interested in being a speaker. Now we do Paid Speak podcast, but it's a very on the side thing. So, my primary business is speaking. And I actually think that makes the podcast unique, because a lot of times when you listen in, well, I don't know if it makes a podcast so unique, but training and things like that, what I've noticed is once somebody gets to the place where they're doing training, they tend to back off from being a paid speaker. And I've kind of done the exact opposite. I keep the pedal pushed. I love being out there and speaking. So I go hard after that. And the paid to speak stuff, the training and the podcast I do is just something I do. You could almost call it like a side business to my regular business.
Good deal. Check out paidtospeakpodcast.com. And Kent, one thing that I've learned, being in the speaking business for the time that I have, and even the time that we've come to know on different, coaching calls that we have, you'll mention somebody and you'll be like, yeah, they're a Hall of Fame speaker, or they're a CSP. For those that don't know what that is, Certified Speaking Professional, underneath the National Speakers Association. And you'll name all these people that are doing great things, making a great impact, making a lot of money, and I won't know who they are. And for me, as I've talked to different people, I came up in the college space. A lot of people don't know who you are. So I want you to kind of give us just the elevator pitch of who Kent Julian is and how you got on this road to be a speaker and an author and all that great stuff.
Yeah. So and you'll find this out about a lot of speakers. There's those that everybody knows. So, the Tony Robbins, there's a Zig Ziglar, those big names, but for every one of those, there's probably 100, 200 speakers out there that are doing really well. They're doing it full time, and they're making a great living doing it. And the reason you don't know them is you're just not. It's kind of like athletes. It's the same thing as athletes. Baseball players or whatever, the superstars, but there's a bunch of other people that made a good living as a baseball player or a sports player. They just weren't a Hall of Fame type thing. So what often happens is speakers become big fish in a small pond. So like in the ponds that I'm in, Odell, and you're the same way in the college market, in the little ponds I'm in, I'm a very well-known person, but outside those ponds, because I don't market to them, I'm not. So anyway, getting to the story, I'll just keep this short and sweet. I started out as a youth pastor and did that for about 20 years. And that was actually a very if you look at it just professionally, I ended up being pretty successful just in my career. I went from a really small church to one of the largest churches in the United States at the time, to where I became the executive director of a national youth association. And it was through that, because I got to speak a lot, I got interested in becoming a speaker. And then once I became the executive director of this national youth organization, I was hiring a lot of speakers, a lot of musicians. And so I didn't realize it. I had never been in business before. I took one business class in college in both my degrees. It was basic business math, and I passed on a curve. Okay. So I barely passed that. But the whole time I'm running this organization, I don't realize it, but I'm getting an education in how to market speaking. And I'm getting an education in, I can't stand how all these people are trying to push their services on me, but there's these few speakers and these few musicians, and the way that they focus on trying to help my organization and trying to help my job as somebody who's hiring them, that really stood out. And so when I started my own speaking business, it's about 12 years now. When I started it, I just started doing what I liked that they were doing. And that's ended up working really well for me. And it's really helped me position myself very differently than other speakers. And even what other people, like other training that I've received and that I've heard, is very different than the way I tend to train.
Yeah, and I think the thing about you, and I don't know if it was authentic or whatnot, but whenever we had conversations, even before, I became a student of yours, you were just really open and sharing and didn't hold anything back. You gave me what I call the behind the scenes tour. You're like, hey, Odell, you got your speaking income over here. Make sure, as you become successful, coach some people, man. Do some coaching. I do some coaching. Buy some real estate. Like you were really open in do this. Once you get your speaking business to a level that you're making enough money to pay the bills, and then you have the extra money. So I appreciated that. But one thing that you really talked about, and you mentioned it, you didn't give me all of the goodies until but the revolving door method and sending helpful content versus just selling. This, for those of you watching, if you're considering getting coaching, what you're about to be blessed with right now is literally thousands of dollars worth of information. And so talk about the revolving door concept and sending helpful content versus just sending emails saying, hey, you book speakers?
Yeah. Well, one of the things Odell, what you just said, that's a great compliment to me. And it is authentic as far as just trying to be an open book. And I learned it from some of the best. I learned it from some speakers who really served me well when I was in my position. And then when I first came out into business, I was fortunate to have a guy named Dan Miller, who we both know, the author of 48 Days to the Work You Love. He's been like a mentor and a coach, and I've been in his masterminds and things like that. And he's really good about, he just kind of opens up everything. Now, obviously, when you pay, you get I would say you get the depth of the nuts and bolts when you pay for something, but he never held back on the basics of the nuts and bolts and telling you, hey, that would be a mistake, et cetera. And so I just feel like I kind of learned that from the best. It was modeled to me. I was so appreciative of Dan. And, I would say a lot of my success is because I've been a friend of his. And so when it came to the revolving door, though, getting to that question, it is real different, because here's what bugged me when I was an executive director. I would get, and this is before, like, emails were pretty new back then. I take that back. I'm getting my timeline. I was getting emails, but I'd get emails and phone calls. And especially for one conference we put on, we put on a bunch of conferences statewide, but there was one national that was a really well-known conference in our sphere. And we had about 7,000 students at it. And it was a 5-day conference. We do 9 main sessions. So we're bringing in tons of speakers. Well, 12 months out from that, my phone would start lighting up, and my email boxes would get filled. And it was always, this is how wonderful I am. When are you, not me, how wonderful they are, and how I just need their services. And when are you picking speakers, and, pick me. And if I don't pick them, they get mad at me. And it was just really weird. But then I would have some that would reach out to me and would be very interested in what we were trying to accomplish and whether they'd be a good fit. And they were also the ones who kind of served me in giving me samples of things they talked about, or things that they were pretty passionate about and how they could serve our conference. So that's where I got the idea of doing the revolving door. So what I have seen a lot of is speakers will send out an email and say, hey, are you the person who books speakers? And if not, could you forward this to them? And hey, let me tell you about this wonderful message I have. And hey, when are you making that decision? And hey, and it's always asking. And so the revolving door is, what I try to do is about every 6 weeks or so, I reach out to the people who are interested in booking speakers that I know of. And instead of asking them for something, I'm trying to give them something. And I'm giving them something of value, whether it's an article, a video, or something like that. It's just something of value that has to do with my message. And so it's promoting my message by giving them that message. And then if I do that 4 or 5 times, and again, I do it I don't bug them. So I'm not doing this every week. I usually don't even necessarily do it every month. It's usually about every 6 weeks. Then when I do make an ask, it's usually better received because they know me better. They like that approach, and they tend to, if my content has connected with them and they like the content, they tend to trust me more. And I'll add this one last thing. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but one of the things I love, this is kind of a hidden secret about the revolving door marketing that I use. One of the things I love is now I don't have to worry about trying to time everything right and trying to, hey, when are they making that decision? And I got to make sure my email lands a week before they're making the decision as a speaker. Instead, I just go, hey, if they get something from me every 6 weeks or so, I'm in front of them in a real positive way. And even if I'm making the ask, 3 months before they're booking a speaker, they're still going to end up getting another email from me that serves them probably the month that they're making that decision. So it just kind of helps with timing. You don't get stuck into who's making decisions when, and how do I stay on top of that kind of stuff.
And that's so brilliant, because I want to speak to the speaker that was like me in a lot of ways. And as I said, you mentioned it in conversations before, I was a part of your Paid to Speak mastermind. And so I started using it a little bit then, and I can't quantify really, because I haven't taken the time to count, but even everything that's going on with COVID, the people that have reached out to me have been because I've just been sending helpful stuff. And I don't even ask. I usually end with a question mark or something like that at the end, like, hey, do you think this would be helpful? Something like that. And they'll respond back and say, well, do you do this? Or that's something. And that has been revolutionary to my business, because I was that guy. I was that speaker that, hey, do you hire speakers? Hey, do you hire speakers? If I send 1,000 emails a month, then I'll get 10 people, I was that person. And you can get speeches that way.
Yep.
But you get a whole lot less people, a whole lot fewer people saying, don't email me again. Or, I unsubscribed 7 times. I'm going to report to the spam police. you get a whole lot less. And I want to ask this question.
That's great.
Why don't more business owners and speakers use that method? I mean, you're in the NSA, you've been a member for a long time, and you've been in business for a long time. That's a question it flummoxes me.
Yeah, good word. Flummox. I don't know. And I gotta be careful because there's so many great speakers out there. And there are speakers that I know are doing similar. Like I just know they're high value. I think of a buddy of mine named Waldo. He's a Hall of Fame speaker, and boy, he's so service minded. I mean, it's so top of mind with him to serve. I don't know if he does revolving door, if he does that kind of stuff, but he's such a positive guy. So there's tons of great ones out there. But I have noticed that, and you said, hey, I was one of those speakers. I think I would have done the exact same thing, because I think that's kind of the primary way people just think about getting into business, not only in speaking, but everything else. It's always, I got to push sales. Instead of taking a long-term view and thinking more about how, in fact, I just talked about this on the podcast that came out today. So on the Paid to Speak podcast, it's episode 22. I talk about how speaking is a relationship business. And it's not a transactional business. And when we think about it being relational, we think, oh, we're going to become buddies with all these people that book us. No, that's not what I mean at all. It's the difference between like buying a one-time purchase of, a book or something, or when we finished out you've been over to my house and you've seen our finished out basement. Well, we had that done. Well, I brought in 5 contractors to get estimates on. And I was not just looking for price. I was looking for, what do I know about this contractor? Do I like this contractor? Do I trust them? And that's the kind of buying decision. And then you got to believe this guy did a great job for us. So guess who promotes him to our neighborhood? Guess who will probably use him if he needs to do something on a rental property? Guess who? Anybody who asks me, hey, who did you use for this? Guess who who I'm going to promote? I'm going to promote him. So when we're reaching out to event planners, we've got to understand that it's relational, and we're building a relationship with them, but they're networked with so many other people that we've got to, we want to build a positive relationship, do a great job on stage, do a great job in marketing to them, do a great job in serving them. And then if they get to know us, like us, and trust us, they're going to tell all their meeting decision maker friends and et cetera. And it's just going to go all over the place that way. So I think the problem why most people don't do business this way is they're just thinking about the sale, and they're trying to make it happen fast versus saying, hey, I'm okay if this takes a while. I'm okay if if my runway is a little bit long to get it started. I just want to, when I get up in the air, I want to be able to stay up in the air. And I think that's why, Odell, you probably have seen this. You've probably seen speakers who are really talented. I've seen speakers that are more talented than me that they get a good launch and they don't last for 5 years. And I always wonder what's going on. And, I think over time people go, I don't care how talented you are. I don't like you and I don't trust you, kind of deal.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing about building relationships with clients, again, huge, that transactional relationship versus, a genuine connection. I've had not even clients. I've had people that never booked me, but they told their friends to book me.
Exactly.
And that has been a blessing to my business. And it's kind of shifting gears a little bit. Right now, as of this recording, there's something going on in the world, and COVID.
Took me a long time to learn how to say that.
This pandemic, man, and I posted the other day, I lost personally about 25 grand and canceled engagements and all that stuff between March and June. And I'm not as rich as you, Kent. So like that hurt. That hurt me. But one thing that you were saying all throughout, and I want to just talk about it a little bit, is you had our group say it, you did videos. What does this make possible?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you right now to talk to the speaker that's watching this or listening to this. What has COVID made possible for your business, and what do you think it's going to make possible for our businesses moving forward?
Yeah. Okay. I would love to. And I got that question from the mastermind I'm a part of, which Dan Miller leads. And I know he got it from somewhere else. So it's a great question to ask all the time. And when you ask it, you're not saying, hey, this isn't a big deal. What we're going through is a huge deal. It has impacted my business. I've lost 19 engagements. Now, when I say lost, they're all rescheduled or we did virtual, but 19 engagements already. And I know, like, I've got one in September, and I emailed them a couple weeks ago, and they're like, yeah, we're still planning to be on. Well, we'll see in July.
Right.
And with our mastermind last night, we were talking about this, and you could just feel the heaviness of, man, we're not sure how this is going to impact us. So when you ask, what does this make possible? It's not like you're not dealing with reality. You are dealing with reality, but you're saying, I can't stay stuck in the negative side of this. So I'll give you two things that COVID made possible, that just as an example. And one, I know people can apply right away. And then the other one, I'll just tell you, by building a relationship business, how those relationships have been positive. So one thing that I think COVID makes possible is this. I've been saying this on my podcast. Now's actually a great time to start a speaking business if you have a long-term view. If you're not worried about getting booked in the next 3 to 4 months, which if you're new, you shouldn't be, because you're not going to get booked in the next 3 or 4 months. It's going to be random luck in any season if you're starting out and you get a paid speaking engagement 3 to 4 months in. And so if you start now and you start doing that revolving door, you have a chance to build a relationship and really serve with no strings attached, while I think the speaking business is getting thinned out right now because there's just some people who aren't going to be able to make it. And that's not I hope that happens to people. That's just a reality. I don't hope it happens to people, but some people just need to get jobs or whatever right now. And so it's a great time to start a speaking business, because when things come back up, and if you've built a strong relationship, you might be one of the top 3 or 4 they're considering when they do something new. So that's one thing it makes possible. For me, what it made possible was, and I don't want to get into the weeds of this entire story, but I just saw in one of the markets, so I'm in multiple markets, and in one of the markets, it's a youth market. Because I built so many relationships, and because I've been serving in this market now for about 6 or 7 years, I just knew they had some training pieces that they have to do. They do it every year, and they have to do it. And so I came up with an idea of, hey, this is how we could put this on virtually, and we packaged it and we offered it, and we only sent out 2 emails. So I did make the ask. So this is one of these things where I made the ask. I made it real clear. The response, Odell, has been huge on that, has been huge. I'm right now, I just booked my 10th organization to do that with. And I'm in conversations right now, not to do that training, but to create a whole nother type of training with a national organization. And so all this business was business that I didn't have before this. I wouldn't have gotten before all of this. And honestly, I've created something that I'm going to be able to market in the future that I think I'll continue to end up working with multiple organizations every year. So it'll be, and I won't ever have to come up with the training again. I just get to do the training again. And by the way, 2 of those out of the 10 that I talked about, they are booking me for to do this 3 years in a row. It's not just a 1-year deal. They're like, hey, we like this concept so much, we'd love to do it 3 years in a row. So it's been great that way, but that's because relationship business, serving over time. They knew me, they liked me, and trust me. They had a real problem because of COVID that they needed solved. And, I had an opportunity to, and honestly, it wasn't even on my mind. Somebody asked me to put something together, and I thought, I bet you other organizations need that exact same thing. And the people who asked me to put it together, it was what's called a request for proposal. I didn't make the cut with them. So it was just a good deal that way.
Yeah. And what you're talking about has really been, I saw somebody say it, and again, I know that you weren't, and we aren't downplaying the enormity of COVID, which is horrible, but we still, as entrepreneurs, we have a duty to our client to help them solve problems. Still, the problems don't go away.
Yep.
And that in and of itself, man, it's opened up so many doors for me. And taking your lead, watching the things that you've done and you've talked about, I've just tweaked them with my stuff. And people, I got 4 requests in one day last week. And
that's awesome.
It's just because of the stuff that, again, following your lead and saying, well, how can I make this better for them, and how can I solve some of their problems? And
I love hearing that.
But one thing that you said, and before we get you out of here, I have to cover this. Is you said, well, I asked that question last, but I want to ask, what do you study the most in your business? When I was able to come to your house, you were giving books away. You were like, look, I've got all these books.
Still have 2 boxes over here I'm trying to get.
And my wife and I are going through that same process as we're cleaning and getting ready to move next year into a new house. But there's so many things that you have, and I don't want to kind of give it away. I think I know the answer to this question, but in your business, what do you study the most?
Okay. First of all, congrats. I definitely want to hear more about those little, what does this make possible things that you did. That is so encouraging. That makes me happy, man. It makes me very happy. Well, for me, what I read more than anything in business is stuff on marketing, So I always say when I went into business, there were 2 things. I want to read the craft of, there's 3 things: the craft of speaking, then I want to read on the topics that I'm going to speak on and become, develop expertise in that areas. But then if you're going to be in business for yourself, you got to read marketing stuff. Like how do you market your business? So those are the things I read. I listen to those kind of podcasts. That's what I study the most.
And that's huge. If you're speaking, or if you have another type of business, you do coaching, consulting, whatever, study marketing, it'll serve you greatly. And I want to end on this. You said this, I remember we were having dinner with we were sitting on the floor. I think, I don't remember where we were sitting at the kind of like the living room. And you said, and piggybacking again, I've got my speaking business, coaching. Then we have this real estate. And you said, I'm okay with my speaking business dying with me. Yeah. The assets that I'm building, like through real estate and different properties, intellectual properties and stuff like that, kind of cool. But my speaking business, I'm going to take that with me when I go on to glory. Talk about that, and for speakers that are, because we have, I think, Kent, we want to build a larger than life brand, a lot of us, and we want to be like, the Zig Ziglars of the world, who's continuously, living on through his son. His son is doing a lot of his work and different things like that. But what did you mean by that, and what can other people kind of pick up from that?
That's a great thing. You ask great questions. I'm so impressed. People, check this out as far as how to interview somebody. Because, man, you pulled that one out, because I actually remember that conversation. And I've said that to several people, but I haven't said it much. So, I mean, you're maybe the third or fourth person I've said that to. And you must have been asking some sort of question in that conversation that made that come out. So this is just me. But I think, like, speaking is such a personal brand. And so, like a Zig Ziglar, I know his son's kind of carrying that on, but I think it would almost carry on whether he was there or not. And I know Stephen Covey's kind of the same way. I would say, especially like with Stephen Covey, though, versus a Zig Ziglar. So this is just my opinion. Both great men, by the way. So this is not talking about either one of them. But I think Zig Ziglar was a speaker who happened to write books. He's kind of more like who I am and how I'm wired. Stephen Covey was, he was really a really in-depth educator who happened to speak, and he wrote books. And so his principles, like carrying on that kind of business and passing that on to your kids and stuff like that, I think is a little bit easier than passing on a speaking business. So I'm okay with if my speaking business dies with me. And what I mean is, if none of my kids carry it on, or if we don't try to, I'm not building Kent Julian speaking to be bought by somebody else. So if my kids were interested, I would have a different view on that. But my kids really, they're not wired that way. They're not interested in like what Tom Ziglar's doing with his dad's brand. I'm sure Tom was probably very involved and maybe even ran the brand for a while. And I just don't see my kids doing that. So what we do, so right now I'm very okay if it dies with me, I guess is the way to say it. And the impact that I have, will live on in videos and things like that might be on YouTube, and that's cool. What I'm more focused on too, though, is I do have multiple businesses. I have speaking business. I do some coaching that you could consider its own business. But then we have a real estate business that we take a lot of the profits that we make from speaking and we invest in just a real nice small little real estate business where we do single family homes and stuff like that. And that's what I feel like I can really pass on to my kids someday, because that way we can, and by the way, Odell, here's another way to look at it. I really run that more like a business than my speaking business. And so what I mean by that, if you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you ever read his stuff, my speaking business is kind of a high-end self-employment thing. Yes, I have staff that I subcontract things out and stuff like that. But if I walk away from it, it's done. That business is done. Or if I don't invest time in it, it's not going to do real well. My real estate business, it's 100% run as a business with me acting as the CEO, and I have people who manage the properties and everything like that. The only thing I get involved in really is buying them, and then just kind of a high running them like a CEO, like I'm a high office. And so those businesses, they're really running like a business. So I'll wrap it up with this. Your question surprised me so much. It's hard to communicate it, but I'll wrap it up with this. I actually wrote an article, and it's not on my website. It's somewhere out there. So if you would Google Kent Julian and Google 2 types of lifestyle businesses, and I wrote the article about this, and I said, there's 2 types of lifestyle businesses. There's the lifestyle business that you own because You want it to be part of your lifestyle. It's who you are at the core of your DNA. And then there's lifestyle businesses that you go, I don't want to be, I like this business. I know this business can build, revenue and make me money, but I don't want it to be necessarily be part of my life. It's not part of my DNA. So my speaking business this is my mission. This is what I feel called to do. So I want to be in the nuts and bolts of that business. I love being involved in that business and doing stuff. I love this kind of stuff. My real estate business, I love real estate, but I don't want to be in the nuts and bolts of managing properties and doing stuff like that. And they're both lifestyle businesses. One lets me live the lifestyle I want, or I live my mission out through that business. And so I get to live that lifestyle. The other one provides revenue for me to live the lifestyle I want to live, if that makes sense. But so that would be a good article. If you can go out there and find it, just Google Kent Julian and 2 types of lifestyle business.
I love that. Well, Kent, I appreciate your time. Had a couple questions. Well, just one really. Any podcast recommendations?
Besides mine? PaidToSpeakPodcast.com. But since we ended with real estate, there's some really good real estate ones that I'd love to listen to. So if anybody who's interested in real estate, I listen to Bigger Pockets. That's one. There's one called Passive Real Estate Income, I think is what it's called. That's a really good one. So there's some really good real estate ones out there. And what's really interesting about real estate, I'll say this about those podcasts. What's really interesting about them is real estate's pretty easy to learn. And I think you can almost learn everything you need to know if you'll just really listen to podcasts. It's not like speaking and different things like that. It's not as complex as that. And so I've been surprised at how much I've learned and been able to implement simply by reading a few books and listening to podcasts.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the sultry sounds. Kent Julian, CSP. Make sure you check out PaidToSpeakPodcast.com. This is Odell Bazell. He's Kent Julian. And in the memorable words of Zig Ziglar, we'll see you at the top.
There you go.
Not from the top. God bless. Take care.
God bless, buddy.